everybody goes around it wrong. Yeah, I run an 8-figure business, and if I ever show an ounce of weakness, the sharks are going to come and eat me alive. And if we can do that strategically, which the strategy is just, I do it in service of my clients. I do it for you. I'm not showing my vulnerability so that you'll feel bad for me and somehow that will make you want to buy stuff from me. It doesn't work like that. If we can visit those vulnerable, tender parts, then this actually expands our capacity for success, for abundance. And so everybody goes around it wrong. We go the opposite. We try to out-succeed our shame and our grief and our pain. And really, if we increase our capacity for shame and grief and pain and learn how to be okay with ourselves with all of these things, then we can increase the abundance, the success. These things will come.
Welcome to Builders, the podcast for impact-driven leaders who are done carrying it all and ready to scale with clarity, strategy, and freedom. I'm your host, Alex Snyder, strategic growth architect, creator of the CEO Recode, and second brain to leaders who are building brilliant companies without sacrificing every ounce of their time, energy, or sanity. Each episode, I sit down with bold leaders who've rebuilt, recalibrated, or redefined what it means to lead well and live well on their own terms. We talk messy pivots, leadership upgrades, tactical wins, and the deep personal work it takes to build a business that actually works for you. If you love the episode, make sure you follow, rate, and share it with another leader who's building big and wants to build smarter. And if you're listening and thinking, damn, I need someone in the guts of my business with me, let's talk. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth and define 2 to 3 high-impact shifts you can implement now to regain traction and build momentum. Now, let's dive in. Let's build it better. Welcome to Builders. I am so excited to have you here with me today for this conversation.
Alex, I'm absolutely honored to be here. I know that putting together a show like this is really a labor of love, and so much goes into it behind the scenes rather than just having fun conversations all the time. And so it means a lot that you would have me here and share me with your audience.
Kyle, you know that more than most people. I really appreciate that you called that out because this part is the fun part. And to your point, there's all kinds of behind the scenes, so thank you. Of course you're going to understand that because you are a world-class presentation coach, a story strategist, and you work with so many coaches and startups and entrepreneurs to use storytelling to better communicate across all platforms. So you understand all components of this more than most people, which is why I'm really excited to have you, because I think so much about growing a business, leadership, is about presence. And I think that we don't talk about that very much outside of, I need to present at a conference, or maybe if you're in the startup fundraising space, I need to pitch. So I am super excited. I, as always, don't even try to do you justice in an introduction. Kyle, in your own words, can you tell us who you are and what you're building?
Absolutely. So I work with some of the highest level experts out there, and they have gotten to a point where they've achieved great things. They have great teams. They have an amazing product. They know what they're doing, and actually their own experience and their own brilliance makes it difficult for them to communicate effectively when it comes to speaking on stages, speaking in webinars. It's not enough to have great clients. It's not enough to have a good podcast or a strong Instagram or know how to do ads. And a lot of people, when they reach a certain level of success, they think that they're automatically a great speaker. And it's really not so. And a lot of us, to get to where we are to be successful in our businesses, we need to have some wires crossed in our minds and in our lives. And a lot of times the wires can get crossed in any number of ways. And but the real dysfunction is often the same. And it's very functional and useful in the beginning. It's, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to achieve my way to success. And this is great in early stages of business, getting your business off the ground in the early six figures. But there comes a point at a certain level of scale or success or team revenue where you can't outwork your own problems. And many people come to me right at this inflection point because they're very time poor and they've been using the same presentation that they came up with on an espresso binge the night before the conference that they gave it at the originally. And it's been working good enough for them, which is about C minus. And then what happens then is they get their C minus results. It's not good enough to really move the needle enough for their business. And they go back and they like try to overcompensate by outworking things. They step on their team's toes and they try to achieve their way to compensate for these problems. And the problem is a deficiency in understanding who we are and why that's important. And like when we try to do this on our own, like if we were to pull up a Google search in our own brain, and it's like, what would be the best story to tell at this conference? Our brain will redact most of the stories that are actually good ones because we've labeled them as bad stories, bad moments, things that we're ashamed of. Or when we're trying to think of what should I teach that would actually make people want to buy from me, we think that I need to teach as much as possible to prove to them that I'm an expert, which often really sends us in the very much wrong direction. And so a lot of the people that I work with, they need to be tricked into feeling and experiencing their stories and their teaching from outside of them first because they're so entrenched in it. And they're frankly so busy that they maybe could figure this out on their own if they had enough time and spaciousness, but they don't have the time. And so when somebody comes to work with me, I'll ask you questions, I'll draw out the story, and I will reflect it back. I will tell you your story as if I am you, so you can feel it for the first time differently. And making somebody feel something is really what we're trying to go for, because there's plenty of information, plenty of knowledge, plenty of thinking to be had already.
Well, I think I scored an 8 on 10 on feeling personally attacked by everything you just said. I love that. It's such a familiar feeling, and I think anyone who is listening is going to be able to relate to at least one of the points. Like I said, I think I probably hit about 8 out of 10 of those. You know, when I was actually really recently listening to a number of podcasts recommended by a friend, and I said, it's so interesting. This person is clearly such an expert, but they wander and waffle in the way they present. And I can tell that it's because they actually have so much knowledge. And in a podcast situation, they're not structured in the way they would be in a presentation. And so it's just, they're like, well, I could take this question 10 ways. And, you know, they just know so much. But it kind of can come across, if you can't recognize that, as this person is hard to follow. I'm not clear on what they're talking about. They don't seem knowledgeable in the way that it's almost like we intake knowledgeable in a different way than we output it. So I love what you said. I'm so excited to dig into this because I think it's going to be extremely valuable for listeners to understand the way that you go about this and, you know, some key things they can work on, but also potentially have the opportunity to work with you. I think that would be phenomenal. Before we dive in, because, I'm itching to dive into the what you do and how you do it and the examples, I always want to first kind of understand a little bit more about you and kind of how did you know that you were meant to build businesses, or maybe you're building the stories and the presence and the confidence that allow others to build businesses?
So I don't know if I've been a very good business builder, to be honest with you. I've built a skill set that I can sell, and I've worked with many business builders, and I've created some success with that. But building my own businesses is still something that I have a lot to learn. I could probably learn a lot and grow from hearing from you and listening to a lot more of your shows, to be honest. But I do have a carefully refined skill set that I do have, like a story from a moment where how I knew that I was meant to do this business that I think would be helpful. I've been a copywriter, a content marketer, And I've built my life around expression and my business around expression for over 10 years. I loved in my early 20s to travel through Latin America. I lived in Chile, Argentina, Peru, Brazil, and Colombia. When I lived in Peru, I took an Amazonian trip and did a rope swing into a lake there once. And a few days after, I found out that I had giardia, which is a really gross sickness that we don't need to get into the details of. But over the course of a few years, I didn't know how to take care of myself. And I had bad gut health, which ultimately ended up being thyroid problems and an autoimmune condition. And I can remember hiring my first life coach in 2016 or 2017. And I remember him saying, what if Hashimoto's disease is your superpower? And Hashimoto's disease was what I had. And I remember being so insulted by the audacity and the stupidness of this comment. I was so angry at this person. It was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I was sure of it. Because I knew that this was the worst thing ever to happen to me. I had joint pain up and down my arms. It was like the Hydra. Every time I would cut off one head, 3 more heads would arise. I would solve some wrist pain, and then I would feel it in my elbow and in my shoulder later. I had jaw pain. I would grind my teeth at night. I would wake up every single morning with this biological anxiety. And by that, I mean, like, I would feel anxiety in my gut and in my system, but I wouldn't wake up and say, wow, my gut feels anxious today. I would wake up and think, oh my God, I'm not working hard enough. I'm not doing enough. The other political party is ruining everything. Oh my gosh, whatever the story might be. It wasn't the right one, but it was very convincing. A good storyteller, of course, can be a dangerous thing to be. About a year after that call, I found myself in a workshop for speakers that I was facilitating and connecting with all kinds of health and wellness experts who wanted to position themselves as great speakers. And some of them were sharing their brilliance and their ideas. And I remember sitting down next to one woman, and she says, hi, my name's Dr. Grace, and I overcome chronic autoimmune diseases with better gut health. And I was like, wow. So your clients, they must want to do this. They try and do this, but that happens. And she's like, oh my God, you need to come work with me. Because I was speaking from my own experience, of my own sifting through the jungle of these strange symptoms and problems that we're having and the frustration that I felt. Instead of being the scientific person or kind of what you were describing as many experts do, where they're just kind of wandering and meandering. And frankly, they're doing that because they've forgotten one important thing. They feel good when they're doing that. They're like wandering their own minds and this is so awesome. I learned about this. It's so freaking cool. Oh my gosh. And they're not at all thinking about the client or the person or where they at and what they need. And I could see that this person needed my help so badly and that I needed their help so badly. And my life changed in an instant. It wasn't because I was a skillful copywriter. It wasn't because I had built successful businesses. It was because of who I was. And frankly, the things that I thought were trash about me, the condemnations, the curses, the worst part about me, that freaking life coach was right. It was a superpower that set me apart. And this happens with everyone that I work with, is that we are neglecting a certain part of us, that if we learned how to express it, we could not only enroll more of our clients, but we would make different and better decisions. And it was around that moment that I realized how important storytelling was and how I wanted to infuse that in stage presentations, which were very exciting and very fun. It reminded me of like being a musician when I was younger. Giving a performance like that to really grow your business was just absolutely enchanting for me. And so that's a bit about how I got into this particular business, among many choices.
Wow. I mean, I'm not shocked. Goosebumps on the story. And of course, it's an amazing story. I was there with you. And as somebody who battles with an autoimmune disorder, oh, could I relate to your journey? And can I relate to how challenging the experts in the health industry find it to engage with patients with this particular kind of challenge, let alone, all the other ones. Also, love this topic. I actually did an episode, I think it was in season 2, where it was dyslexia as a superpower. And an amazing client, who's also now a good friend, come on and talk about this because we both had that. But I also had my first coach I ever worked with tell me, your superpower is your kryptonite if you can't learn to control it. And it's really reminded me of what you talked about, of just the more we actually understand ourselves, the more we can leverage. Like, you have to understand the shape of your peg to understand the holes in which it will fit, is probably a very inelegant way of understanding, like, where can you plug in and make a difference, or whatever it is you're trying to achieve, where can I plug in and achieve X. When people see what you're doing now, when they hear what you do, I mean, I just listened to you and I got chills, and it is clear to me that there has been a very significant personal arc to arrive where you are, and that it's at least one of the things that fulfills you in life, which sounds like an amazing headline, right? Like, oh yeah, it was tough, but like, look where you are, right?
I did it. I'm
Exactly.
cured.
What do people not see when they hear that headline?
I love doing this work because I love finding ways that people can value and express themselves. And it has also been my biggest challenge, and something that I honestly still struggle with. Still to this day, I'm like, well, I don't have anything that interesting to say. I don't need to post anything. I shouldn't write another book or these kind of things. And I struggle with understanding my value and my place. And I struggle with trying to overwork in order to earn my place or earn a sense of safety in this world. And it's so, I want so badly what I offer other people to happen for me. And I suffer from the exact same problems of I'm so close to it and I don't relate to myself appropriately. And so it's so fun and satisfying to see how people physiologically shift when they experience their stories in a different way. The thing that they were sure was a burden becomes an opportunity, and the decisions that they make because of it. Or simply when they learn that spending time being creative and thinking about their talks and their stories is valuable and worth their time, then they stop doing so much operating in their business and actually free up more time. They start to live the business that they actually wanted to live, which is another thing. I have this problem of not giving, I've wanted to create a lifestyle business that I could travel the world and do a lot of these things. And it's so hard for me to actually give myself permission to do that. And so I'm right there along with all of you. And I work with people. There's this kind of trope that a lot of entrepreneurs have of your ideal client is you 5 years before. And for me, my ideal client has always been me 5 years or 10 years ahead of me. But that often means they see me and they're like, who's this young guy? And I don't have as much money as you. I don't have as much team as you. I haven't done these things, but I've struggled so much in this one particular area. And I know that if we can shift this one needle for you, that so many things open up. And that's what I hope they can see, and what frankly I don't think everybody sees, or most people don't see, and they would rather work with somebody who is there's a lot of stage coaches out there who are on stages and they're buying the biggest ones and they have these big things and presentations. And while I tell good stories and give good talks myself, I'm not as flashy and I'm not as externally successful. But what I do provide is a level of presence and challenge and depth that I don't think many others do. And it's how I get you to the talk that converts that's really going to make the difference, not what the talk ultimately is.
so interesting. I want to key in on the first part because I think what you just mentioned is also reflected in your business model, right? The people you see on those big flashy stages are often, it may not be the first offer they make, but they're often helping you with pay to play opportunities. They've bought the stage that they're on and they are going to help you get on stage for a fee. Not just to them to help you speak, but to be on a stage through the network of pay to play opportunities. And from what you've just described and what I know about you, you're not promising to plug me into my next speaking opportunity. You are promising to unlock the thing in me that will amplify my communication, my storytelling, my ability to communicate a important point with presence, but it's ultimately still up to me or up to another service provider to be getting the opportunities in the door. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's one element of it, but frankly, like the biggest flashiest people will you are seeing them on stage and you're moved by them, and then you'll pay a lot for a program and you'll get kind of siphoned off to coaches or just like AI things that they have on their own. And the people that really understand how to work with me is that they want my presence and my depth. They want the friction that I can create to challenge and push back on their ideas until they are sharper and more refined. And that's not something that you're going to find in the flashiest of
Right.
presentation coaches.
There's also something to be said. It's not, those who don't always know how to teach. It's a very different skill set to elicit, unlock, craft skills in other people than it is to obtain and perfect them yourself, right?
Yeah,
So I
and
think
so they
that,
hire coaches for it a lot of the time.
yeah, they're the front man, the face, and then there's a whole infrastructure behind it. So I love that nuance and distinction about what you do and how you do it, and the vulnerability of, and for myself, I struggle. And I see that in my business too sometimes, I think I get quite hard on myself about when I'm maybe not getting something done or not shifting something or not delegating in a certain way, and I'm like, Alex, if this was for anybody else, like, it would be done, and it would have been done a month ago. Like, what are you doing? And so I think that is, I really appreciate you sharing that. I think it's an honesty that a lot of us can reflect on and understand that it doesn't diminish from the ability to help other people do it, and in some ways it maybe fuels that ability. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking for. Like when people are going on stage, they're trying so hard to prove themselves as the most perfect, flawless person. But when people are like sitting in front of you, they want this honesty. They want to know who the real person is. We can get all of the information that we want, and it's going to get easier and easier. I can ask ChatGPT for any knowledge that I want. And so if you're just spitting all of the knowledge that you have at me, it's not really going to resonate. But the honesty and the insight and the wisdom, which comes not just from your victories, but from your failures and your weaknesses, and understanding and integrating how to fit the peg in the right hole, as you said earlier, is what somebody is really looking for when they're seeing somebody take the stage and making the choice, should I work with this person or not?
I like that. Do you think that therefore there's a difference between, polish and presence and perfection, like sterility?
Yeah. Perfection in this thing would be almost over polished, over present, or over. You've told the story and you've given that talk so many times that it no longer really has that much of an effect. This reminds me of an idea I have called the life cycle of stories. And so there's 3 stages. There's a story that's too soon, there's a story that's just right, and there's a story that's too late. And the stories that are too late are stories that are true, but they no longer have any emotional pull on you, so they don't feel true anymore. Like I had a woman who was a coach for mom entrepreneurs. And she would tell a story about holding her baby in one arm and trying to like build a business. But by the time she came to me, her kids were off in college, and telling that story, though it was true, did not feel authentic. Or I have another, I think you probably know him as well, Alex Moscow, came to me to work with me when he was, his story was speaking with a stutter on stage, and he had been speaking from stages for years and selling more than most people could ever imagine from stages. And so the idea of being shy on stage and speaking of a stutter, while true, and he still had the stutter, was not authentic anymore. And so there's that. There's stories that are too soon. This is a story that you haven't fully integrated in yourself. And this is like riding an incredibly strong horse that has no training. And you can get on this horse and it will go fast. But if the slightest thing goes wrong, you're in the horse's world now. And this means like when people get on stage and they lose control of their own emotions, and then people are like, is this person okay? And we don't want that either. So the stories right in between are stories that are true, that are still fresh enough that they have an emotional pull and resonance on us, but aren't so but we've also integrated them and mastered them so that we can channel it in service to the audience, instead of hoping that exposing our vulnerability will somehow make people want to buy from us.
That's so interesting. You've made me think. Last year I gave a talk that I completely knew. I'd never done it before. And I really reflected on it as I was preparing it, as I was preparing the slides, because I was telling a story that, of course, positioned me, in a good light overall as an expert. But the story of how one of the places I learned that was very difficult. And I had to tell this story of, almost losing our company. It was during COVID. So I thought, do I talk about COVID? Is it still too soon? Is it just, it's a collective trauma. It's relatable, but like people have big feelings. And I remember all of this. And then even to what I put on the screen, I put these photos. I'm up there and, I'm not overly professional. I love being an entrepreneur. I get to choose, how I want to show up. But, I'm in my stage presence. And the photos I have from that time are like me backpacking, getting on a backpacking flight, with like just looking like trash in an airport, and photos of me like baking during COVID. But I'm referencing this time to bring out just a sense of bringing everyone to the point of origin of this story with me, which I'd love your thoughts if that's a great tactic or not. But I remember thinking like, oh my goodness, I'm about to talk about something that was traumatic for everyone. Maybe that's good, maybe that's not. That people have mixed feelings about, that I'm going to put these photos of me just looking like a trash panda, like up on stage while I'm trying to, and looking, I look young for my age to start with, throw a couple braids and like, pigtail braids and a backpack on me. Like, I don't look like the person, to your point, that you want to hire to take your company to 50 million, 100 million, 500 million. Like, but I leaned into it, and I leaned into checking in with the audience, and somebody was like, oh, I remember that time, and I was like, they remember. And even in the moment, there was things that didn't go right with the projection at the event I was at, and I laughed and I leaned in, and I look back now, and it was both, I would say, the speaking engagement keynote that I've gotten the best feedback on, because I told this very genuine story that has, to your point, like settled enough that it's not like freshly emotionally traumatizing for me. And I kind of had fun with it. Like I enjoyed it. It reignited my love for this stage. And so I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh, okay, I think that I understand why. And it was almost, as always, there's a fine line, but by starting out in this place of not talking about perfection, of talking about reality, of talking about what I thought, experienced in a very difficult few days, weeks, really actually landed with people. And from there, I could then build on that to this is what happened, this is what we learned, this is what we did that made it work, and this is why I believe insert thesis.
Yeah.
And this is what that means for you. And so I'm really curious, because we said polished and presence, not perfection. What do you think about how important it is to take a strong perspective? Because as you said, information is at our fingertips, right? But somebody who can tell you, this is what I believe and this is why, and if you can understand this, it will help you. Is that vital? Do you have to kind of take a position?
I do think taking a position is really important, and how we do that and how we express our truth. There's a great opportunity that you pointed out that doesn't come very intuitively for most people. You shared pictures of a specific time and a specific moment, and this challenge happens all the time on my podcast and with my private clients. I'll try to ask them, like, when did you feel this challenge? And they'll immediately go, here's how I solved the problem. And I'll be like, no, tell me about a specific time, like a room you were in, and the photos that you're invoking are real specific moments. And getting into an actual moment where we can see things, we can smell things, we can maybe not smell things in your case, Trash Panda, but be in a moment with the person. It activates so much more of our brains than than just declaring facts. And so there's a huge opportunity that very few people take in creating a moment and speaking in present tense and sharing our thoughts and our inner dialogue as if it's happening. And that's what's bridging the gap that you're pointing out. Another thing that I think you expressed that you may not have noticed, like when things go wrong, is the best time for you to actually demonstrate your mastery. If things go wrong and you're able to be playful and calm and still engage the audience, that means that you know your stuff well enough that you're able to be playful. And being playful is the sign of like, I've mastered this. I'm having such a good time. I'm not worried about my notes on my slides. I'm not worried about what's coming next. I'm not worried about trying to impress you. I'm here and I'm enjoying myself and I'm present, which means I know my stuff well enough that even if things go wrong, I'm cool. And isn't that what you would want with you're growing a $50 million business and something's going to probably go wrong and you probably want the leader to be keeping their cool, right? Here I am. Yeah. And then and then taking a position and taking a stand, which usually comes from a story and a moment like what you shared, a vulnerable moment, and you said, I learned something, I discovered something from this pain, from this challenge that I faced. I discovered that there was a value, and that's where I took my position and I took my stand. Sometimes, like, there can be benefits to being somewhat controversial or dividing a room, and this doesn't necessarily have to be like a political thing. It can be all kinds of stances and beliefs and systems, and I think there's times and places for that. But taking a stand and taking a belief, and I think what the most important thing, and I'll like keep coming back to this idea over and over again, is taking a stand for your client. Telling a story about you isn't about you. It's about reflecting, hey, I know exactly what you're going through right now, and I've gone through the same thing so much. It's been so hard, let me tell you. And because I've been going through this for so long, I've developed a shortcut. And I want to share that shortcut with you today. So you can either do what I did and figure it out on your own, or you can get my help.
Yeah, 0 and 10 stars do not recommend all the steps that we went through.
Yeah, no.
Here's the value. I love that. So you have been on your own journey. You work with leaders who are on their journey. Are beliefs about leadership that either maybe you've had to rewrite or that you see, really big leaders you work with having to like rewrite these beliefs or these understandings or the stories they were sold on their way up, that when they get there, they're like, this ain't it.
Mm-hmm. I've been writing like a style talk with one of my clients about this exact thing. I think the greatest lie that all of us have ever been told is like, if you picture a scale, and on one side of the scale is success, achievement, money, whatever the things it is that you want is on one side of the scale. And then on the other side of the scale are things like capacity for pain and grief and challenge and all of these things. And a lot of us think that if I can add more to my success scale, then eventually I'll have enough success that I can take a breath and deal with all this bullshit that I've been hiding in the closet. And like with everything that's going on in the world and all the celebrities out there and the high level people that you're seeing out there, doesn't work, turns out, doesn't work. And actually being able to embrace and visit the side of you that's shame, the side of you that's in pain, the side of you that's vulnerable, and doing it strategically. And the answer is so easy, but they don't think that they ever want to go there. If I show vulnerability, I run an 8-figure business, and if I ever show an ounce of weakness, the sharks are going to come and eat me alive. And if we can do that strategically, which the strategy is just, I do it in service of my clients. I do it for you. I'm not showing my vulnerability so that you'll feel bad for me and somehow that will make you want to buy stuff from me. Doesn't work like that. But if it's like, I understand that. And if we can visit those vulnerable, tender parts, then this actually expands our capacity for success, for abundance. And so everybody goes around it wrong. We go the opposite. We try to out-succeed our shame and our grief and our pain. And really, if we increase our capacity for shame and grief and pain and learn how to be okay with ourselves with all of these things, and I'm not very good at it, but then we can increase the abundance, the success. These things will come. But we cannot outwork, we cannot outrun, we cannot outmoney, we cannot out-succeed. And the harder that you try to do it, the harder the truck is that is going to come and smack you to wake you up. And now I have over 400 podcast episodes hearing stories just like that.
400 episodes, my gosh. I could not have asked for a better lead-in to something that I always want to talk about with my guests, which is success. So, I've somewhat branded wealthy leadership as this really just success on your terms. It's building a business that achieves the impact you want with the financial support that you want or require, given your situation, without sacrificing your health, mental and physical, and whatever else matters to you, family, community, passion projects, triathlons, whatever. And so I always am curious, what is your definition of success? How has that changed, if it has, over time? And are there things that you're no longer willing to trade off within that?
Yeah. Success more and more for me has less to do with external things and more to do with me being okay with where I'm at in my life right now. And that being said, I can be way more successful. But there's like, I've spent so many times and so many years like thinking, okay, once I get this much money per month, once I cross the 6-figure mark, once I do this, then I'll finally be okay and I'll finally do this. And like I was just saying in this scale metaphor, the needs of my business have always expanded to meet me wherever I could possibly be, and they will always rise to challenge me. And being successful is like spending a Monday morning playing guitar instead of trying to do outreach or write copy, trusting my sales process and my everything that I'm doing, knowing that the right clients are coming my way. Success is spending time with my own vision and my own magic and wondering, what do I really want from my life? What do I really want from this year? Not as like, how do I make more money for this, but actually have a vision that is exciting and inspires me. And I have I don't know if I'm perfectly good at like no longer accepting things, because like a lot of this week I've had 5-6 hour blocks of Zoom calls, and some of that's just necessary for where I am and building relationships and doing things. But I would like to defend my AM time a lot more and just use that for time where if it's not playing guitar, it's writing posts, it's sharing my stories, it's working on my business and doing my own things, or it's going skiing, and or it's taking some time off. And the more that I can do that, like having more money would be great. I would love some more money. Having more clients, I guess, is also more money. And having an easier time with that. And I, of course, want all these things. I would love to be able to afford a house someday. I would love to be able to make some big investments. I would love to have a really strong retirement account. But like right now, the way I've seen these things and the way the world is going, it's like those things don't seem to provide what I think they're going to provide me, which is going back to the same scale thing of when I finally have a house, then I'll finally be okay with the scoundrel that I am, and I'll be able to relax for a little bit, which isn't true. And so the only success is like I get to be okay with exactly where I am and the scoundrel exactly as I am. And some days I do well at that, and some days not so. But again, it's like it's a process, and I'm learning to sit with my own grief capacity, with my own pain capacity, and to learn to love and embrace that, and give the love to like my inner child self, and this part of me that for so long I've been just driving hard and pushing, which I think is like my trips to South America were not the only reason that I have an autoimmune condition. And I have an autoimmune condition of the thyroid, which there is something of like speaking my truth and expressing myself and being in alignment and sharing my emotions fully, which is like a blessing and a curse. I think that I feel a lot more than most men in particular, and maybe most people. And it's really frustrating. And I wish I felt less, and I wish I was an asshole sometimes. But it's like hard, I can't do that, and I can't be that. And so I have to deal with these like storms inside of me. And that's what the best, smartest, most successful people, they want that. They need that because they are lacking that. And so they come to me so I can channel that for them. But it also means that I've got to learn to, it's like a hot fire, and you can build a hearth around it and use it to heat your home, or it can like spark up and burn the whole house down. And I'm learning to temper that over time.
So interesting that the thing that can be so challenging for you is the thing you're drawing on to light others' sparks, and that's such a, again, your greatest superpower can be your kryptonite if you can't learn to manage it. I love that theme. When we talk about highs and lows and the moments that shape us, what do you think about failure? Having it all? Do you think that you must fail along the way to be successful? Do you think that it's possible to have it all at some point?
What comes to mind is I remember speaking with basically one of the sons of, when I was in Utah in college, I remember like struggling with my business and not having any money. And one of the sons of basically the equivalent of the Rockefeller families of Utah was hanging out with me. And he looked at me and he was jealous of me because he had never had that pressure in his life. He had never had, it would be like growing up on the International Space Station and never experiencing Earth's gravity, and that would mess with you. And if you got into the gravity of Earth, that would be a very unfortunate thing. And so he never had the gravity of pressure of having to solve problems because there was always enough money around. And frankly, I would love to try to have his problems for a while. That sounds pretty nice to me too. And I'm sure he'd love to trade spaces with me. So I think, again, like having it all is knowing what's enough. Having it all is saying, I've done enough today and now I can turn off and I can go ride my bike. I can go skiing. I can do whatever. And failure, I think so. Like I just experienced a failure on a more personal level, on like a relationship level recently, where it was a result of me not being able to take care of myself and speak my truth and honor things. And like I said, I've listened to 400 episodes, 400 stories just in my podcast, not even the thousands more that I've worked with, but of these people who get to a point of ignoring their pain and ignoring their problem, and the pain gets so loud that it hits them like a truck, and then they decide to make a change. This is what every story begins with. And I would hope, I'm a smart guy. I know I am. I know it. I really do. I would hope I would be smart enough to learn from these people that every week at least share the stories of their messing up and having to go through a big process to reinvent themselves. And the only way that I think, I've learned some things, not the hard way, but nevertheless, I've had to learn a lot of things the hard way and experience my own pain. And this might just be the archetype of person that I am, and maybe there are some that can read a book and truly like integrate things, but I have to feel a deep pain and have an experience in order to fully integrate and move on with that. And so I do think that failure is an essential part. But the good news is what the story that we tell ourselves about failure and the meaning that we make of it doesn't have to be, I'm failed, this is done, I'm broken. And I've done my fair share of that. But if we know about storytelling, if we've learned about this, then we know that if it's like a face of a clock, failure is like at 3 or 4, maybe 5 o'clock at the latest. And the good news is on the other side of that, there is a gift, a treasure, a victory that can be had. And if we are wise enough to be in the moments of failure and really be like, I can trust that a beautiful thing is going to come of this, then it takes some of the sting and the burden off of our own failures, or the experience of it. And really, like, the failure isn't the problem, it's the judgments that we have about ourselves and the failure. That's really the problem, or the meaning that we make of it, that really creates a lot of the challenges that we make us afraid of failure.
Kyle, I love that. And there are so many threads I want to pull in there. However, I really want to make sure that for those listening who are like, okay, great, like, tell me, how do I get on stage and tell the best story and make people see that I know my shit? Like, how do I do that? Because I know that's probably what I would be thinking. I would be like, really love nerding out with you guys, because I really do. And I want to be better at this. So you said something earlier where you said you extract the story from them. And I had an experience working with a friend on my brand, which, to your point, I waited years to create a brand for my business. All the things, the stories, the way of telling. I was like, no, I'm just really good, and I'm really lucky that I know enough people who know I'm really good, so it's fine. And I'm existing at this way below my potential level in this business, but also partly because I burned all that jet fuel in my previous business and the one before, right? So I worked with her, and after going through, I said it was like an exorcism. It was like an exorcism. You just went in and you just pulled out the things that we needed from me. And I was like, it was wild to have that experience. And when you said that you helped to kind of extract the story from your client, that really landed for me because it reminded me of that powerful experience. So there is obviously a result people are going for, but then there's how you get there. And so I would love to hear a little bit more about how your approach is different, why it produces, bigger and better results for your clients.
Yeah, and we'll give somebody the chance to have something to come away with. So how do we make an authority story? This is an authority story is what you would use in the first 3 to 5 minutes of a signature talk. The purpose of this story is to say, hey, you want to listen to the rest of what I have to say. And a lot of us skip that, or a lot of us think like, hey, I'm a hypey cool person, so you should trust me. And so they come in 3 parts. It's called a 3-act play. The first act is a painful moment. The second act is you putting together a solution. And the third act is you experiencing the benefit of the solution. And a lot of us have a difficult time finding that painful moment. And here's how I trick people into getting past the Google search. And so I would ask you, like, who's your ideal client? Simple enough. We hopefully have that answer. What problems do they have? 3 problems. Sometimes people will give me solutions as their answers, and I'll say, no, we need problems. And then we'll go a little bit further, and I'll say, what would somebody say who hasn't heard you before? They're like speaking to their friend at a coffee shop about these problems, and they're like talking about it with them. How would they describe these problems to a friend that they've never met you before? Okay, good. And then it would be like, what would they say? It's 3 a.m. and they calling you and they're freaking out and they are so desperate and so afraid right now. And they are expressing things that they've never expressed to anyone. They're telling secrets they've never told anyone before, and you're standing next to them by their bed. What are they really saying about these problems? And what are they making it mean about them? And usually we can unlock some pretty interesting things. And then I will read those words back to them. I'll say, I want you to just feel in your body where these words are occurring. And we'll read them back. And then wherever it's happened, sometimes solar plexus, sometimes in the heart, sometimes in the throat. It depends, but it doesn't really matter. Because once we're feeling it in our body, then we ask the magical question, when did you feel like this? And there's the moment. And the magical thing is like we find this moment, we find the specific moment, the moment that we can walk them into the room in. And there's one more trick and there's one more twist. I don't want you to say exactly how the moment went for you. I want you to take this moment and I want you to paint your client's language on top of it. And when we use their language to describe this moment, it creates the effect of people in the audience feel like you snuck into their room at night and read their journal. And they trust you because you're sharing in your moment and you're leading from a painful moment that you experienced. You're not saying, how many of you have a dirty secret out there? Who has herpes out there? And making them raise their hand. Oh, I have this pain and this problem. You're saying, I have herpes and I was dealing with this dark, challenging thing. And by you being able to lead, they're like, whoa, I feel so seen. Nobody's ever talked about this way before. And that's the effect that we want to create. And so we can get them enrolled that way. The next scene is us putting together the unique cocktail of solutions, not necessarily what the outcome is, but how you get your outcome. I wanted something faster. I wanted to have more fun while I was doing it. I wanted to have time off to spend with my kids. Whatever the unique things that you want to showcase about your product, you start to put them together, and then you reflect an opposite moment. Whatever that dark moment was, I knew I had made it when I was standing on the beach with my family and my business was supporting me, and the only emails I was getting was from my team telling me that there were no problems to be had. And you are reflecting again in your story the outcome that you want to promise your audience. And if you can put these 3 scenes together in about 5 minutes in a 45-minute presentation, then they will want to listen to the rest of what you have to say.
Love that. Thank you so much for detailing that out. I'm like, how do we clip this and just make it a little short? It's so great. When you do this, as someone who speaks about strategy is really important, operations is really important, and culture is really important, and as a leader, if you don't grow with your business, it's going to be very uncomfortable. You as a person have to grow as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as an executive, right? It's a personal development course none of us signed on for, but all of us are going through with varying levels of consent. You aren't just helping them land more speaking gigs or even just be better at their speaking gigs, right? Like, what else do you see happen? What are the knock-on effects?
I'll tell you a story about one of my clients, Jerry. I was working Jerry for over the last, over 2025. And I remember him telling a story at my mastermind retreat I had in March. And he was a health executive helping build multi-million-dollar health businesses. And he would tell this story of fighting with his wife and then coming home and kneeling in front of his daughter and saying, honey, I need to know, are you scared of me? And she says, yes, Daddy, especially when you and Mom fight. And they're fighting because he's working so hard. He's working 40 or like super, super long weeks, super long days, spending 3 weeks away from home, missing out on all the soccer games and all of the things. But he's doing what's necessary in order to grow the business. And when he told this story at the retreat, he like gets down on a knee, just like right in front of everybody, and you could hear a pin drop when that conversation happens. And he started telling this story to other health executives, and people would be moved to tears, and they would come up to him and want to talk to him about like what he's doing and learn more about what was going on. And at the same time, he was working for an incredible clinic in Florida. And the problem was he was in the same pattern. He was working 18-hour days. He was traveling, 3 weeks. His family lived in Minnesota, and he was spending most of his time in Florida, like running himself ragged. They wouldn't get him like the right amount of support he needed to actually execute on his job, and they had just incredible demands for him. And he was working hard because that's what he knew and that's what was necessary. And he started telling this story over and over again, and there was a contrast that happened, a cognitive dissonance. You can't tell the story and be living this life. And I can't take all the credit for this, but he was sharing his truth in the story, and he was not living his truth in the life. And over the course of 2025, I saw him start to be like, I need to change things. And he went from being like the CEO to kind of stepping down into a nonprofit role in the company and slowly like winning back more of his time and negotiating in a way that was really intense and really difficult. But ultimately, by the end of the year, he had to step away from this company entirely, and he was attracting new opportunities and new businesses. And now he lives at home. He still works hard, but he has several different businesses that he's a part of. He gets to spend more time with his kids, spend more time with his family, and he's living the way that he wants to be. And this is like, when you start to express your stories and your truth, you make different choices. And I don't know if he would have, he drew upon that story and had the courage to change himself. And I see this happen in so many ways of when we get better at articulating our stories and our vision. It's not just enrolling people into working with us, it's enrolling ourselves into our vision and coming into much greater alignment with that.
Wow, that is very powerful. I think, to your point, as a psychology nerd, like cognitive dissonance, you cannot exist in it for long. So you change what you think or you change what you do. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, if you're having this really profound experience of telling the stories that shape you and telling about really what matters to you as a way of explaining how you are where you do, how could that not impact the rest of your life? How could it not shine a spotlight on where those cognitive dissonance points still exist? So I love that story, and that, I almost like a halo effect that, it's going to shine a light and really shift your life and your business and your relationships, and the parental business builder dynamic I see that in my clients all the time. That is not one that people take lightly, and yet it is absolutely one of the hardest ones to solve. I'm curious, we were chatting before we jumped on, and you spoke about speaking and storytelling as a flexible martial art, and I made a note because I thought I need to ask about this way of seeing it, because I think, to your point, I think earlier you may have not said this exactly, but what it brought to mind for me was this version of, the polished, perfect stage personality versus the messy, emotional telenovela, like those will draw you in, but they're probably not selling your product or whatever you're doing. There's these different archetypes of stories that a lot of us can relate to, storytellers.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, when you talk about a flexible martial art as a way of looking at what you are so incredible at teaching people, what does that mean for you? Why is that the kind of perspective or imagery that you've landed on?
Yeah. So a lot of us we think that one great talk, or if we have one perfect story, that it's going to be the skeleton key that unlocks all of the things for us. And frankly, like, stories and the situations are going to change from place to place to place. And having like a good origin story, like what we talked about building, is like having a great Chuck Norris roundhouse kick. It's a very powerful story. But if you only have one Chuck Norris roundhouse kick and you're entering martial arts tournaments, you might win a couple of fights, but people are going to pick up on this, and you're not going to be able to be sustainable in this for a long time. And so I'll tell a story about one of my clients, and it'll give you an example of what's really going on here. Reed Davis, who runs a functional diagnostic nutritionist company, like a $10,000 health coaching certification, came to me and wanted to work with me over the course of 6 months. The first 2 months of the 6 months, he was speaking to clinicians and acupuncturists. Clinicians and acupuncturists have a certain way of talking about success for themselves and their clients. His program works great for them. And so we built a talk to speak to those people. The next 2 months, he was speaking to CrossFit gym owners. CrossFit gym owners have a very specific way of talking about who they are and what makes them successful and what their clients' success means. And did we need to write an entirely new talk? No, we only really needed to change about 15% of the talk. We pulled out a few stories, client stories of clinicians, and we put in a few CrossFit gym owners, and we changed out a few words. But the shape of the stories and the movements of the ideas remained intact. The next 2 months, we were speaking to biohackers. Biohackers have their own way of talking about what success means for them and their clients. And we pulled out the stories of CrossFit gym owners and put in stories of biohackers. And with each change in the formula, but staying true to the overall signature talk, Reed started to understand how to tell a story, not as a perfect script, but as a movement of the mind. I know that I need to hit these notes. I know that these people standing in front of me have these problems. So when I tell my story, I'm going to reflect these problems. I know that these people over here have these objections. And so when I'm teaching, I'm going to address these objections. Instead of, I have the perfect script, I have it memorized, I'm going to read exactly what I've memorized every single time. And this is like a martial art. When we are practicing over time, there's not a single way to do it. We need to learn to be present and adapt. And when you can start to block punches without thinking about it, or do the chops while being there, and it comes with practice and training and adaptation over time. And this is what really allows you to wing it in the long run, instead of being like what you described at the very beginning of this, somebody who's just meandering and entertaining themselves from the stage, which doesn't do anybody any good, to being present and listening. I know what a story needs, and I'm going to listen to my audience and give it to them, instead of thinking, how do I prove myself to them?
Yeah. That's such an interesting perspective.
Thank you.
Resisting the urge to quote Bruce Lee. So if someone has been listening to this and, they're like, love it, this is 2026 is my year, I want to get better at this, how do they get in touch with you to learn more about you, about what you offer, if they want to go on a retreat, if they want to work with you one-on-one? What's
Yeah.
the best way to find you and connect?
I would encourage you to go to thestoryengine.co. You can look at a few of the resources and services that I have. You can check out my podcast there. Every single week, I publish a new guest where I go through this story creation process that I've been describing about. I'm sure we're going to have you on the show very, very soon as well. And if you're yes, ready,
of course.
And also, I'm not the most social media person, but if you find me at Hey Kyle Gray on Instagram, tell me you heard of me on this show or from Alex. I would love to chat with you. And I'm working with people who want to create more freedom, create more time, create more success by telling better stories. And it's a lot easier and more accessible than you think. And I'd love to connect with you.
I love it. So we'll make sure we put all of those links in the show notes. So if you're listening, just go have a look and clickety-clack on those to reach out to Kyle. Now, before we wrap up, we have a couple rapid-fire questions. You can pass, you can give one word, one sentence, whatever kind of works for you. You're welcome to skip over anything. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Amazing. So, what is one decision that changed everything for you as a leader?
I accidentally, during the pandemic, moved to Hawaii. And this was a time where I started really leaning into how do I live the way that I want instead of the way that I think things should be. And got a lot closer to this process and learned how to take care of myself better.
What does strategy feel like when you're doing it well?
Strategy, when you're doing it well, feels there's a certain confidence that you have. There's an alignment. You're able to face challenges and setbacks and whatever the problem may be that's put before you. And you have a confidence that you can continue and see past it. And so it's a calmness and a stability. And it's also, I think, strategy informed by vision, which is inspired and excited. Whatever challenges beset you, you have something to draw on to fuel you through it.
Is there a book, a podcast, or a person that has really cracked something open for you?
There are so many, but I would have to say Mark Manson in this case. I remember reading his blog from a very long time. I had him come and speak at my college when I was a student. And he was one of the first people that really opened me up to, I can build a business and travel all over the world and do whatever I want. And I'm really grateful for what I learned from him.
So cool. What's something you've said never again to in your business?
I wish I have said this many times, and still sometimes they sneak in. But there's two kinds of clients. There's win more clients, and these are people that I feel like you are going to win and be successful whether or not you work with me, and I want to help you win more, and I want more of those. And there are clients that I call defibrillate clients, and they're the ones that expect me to save their lives. And it always goes so bad working with them because they come to me to learn how to be authoritative, and then they rely on me to give them permission to have authority, and that just doesn't work out.
We have talked on so many past episodes about locus of control or variations of that. So yes, 100% can relate to that. If you had a free weekend, zero obligations, how would you spend it?
I would go skiing, and I would play guitar, and maybe go to a hot springs.
Oh, delightful. Kyle, that is it for today. Thank you so much for being on Builders. This felt like a masterclass in speaking and leadership development. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, as well as so much tangible guidance that people can use to start to tweak and unlock their own, genius and expertise and knowledge.
It's been my honor. Thank you so much again for becoming the person to ask great questions like this, for creating an amazing space where we can have an extended conversation. And thank you for leading so many leaders to businesses and lives that they need. And all of you listening out there, go and rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Subscribe to it. Do it. It's so hard, and it's such a pain for the person that's actually making this thing to ask you to do it over and over again. And it's so hard to get people to actually leave reviews. Please do it. It makes such a big difference, and it really supports the show.
Kyle, thank you for that. All of that. That was beautiful. Just such a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That's a wrap for this episode of Builders, where we get real about what it actually takes to grow companies that perform without grinding you into the ground. If today's convo sparks something for you, here's what to do next. Follow the show, drop a 5-star review, and share it with someone else who's building big. Don't let it be lonely at the top. If you're ready for more clarity, more leadership freedom, and less of a duct tape and go growth vibe, let's connect. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth. Walk away with a personalized fix-it list that gives you the clarity you've been craving on what to shift now to regain traction and build momentum. For more tools, insights, and my no-fluff takes on leadership and scaling strategically, join the Builders Club, also linked in the show notes. You can also head over to leaderswhobuild.com, where you'll find all the links to Pete My Creds, see client wins, or just confirm that yes, I went to the gym today. Until next time, keep leading boldly, building smart, and living success on your terms.